Well, as we speak this morning, we're seeing on day 12 of the protests some of the largest gatherings yet across major cities, including Washington, D.C., as our viewers can see there on the screen now, just outside the White House. These protests continue unabated. I want to get your analysis of the crisis in America and the president's handling of it, Paul.
Well, America is consumed by frustration, grief, and anger. This is an American tragedy. And the point to highlight, Kieran, is how long these protests and demonstrations have gone on. Now, 10 days. Now, in a situation like this, such a national tragedy, the onus falls very much upon the president. This is where Donald Trump has failed. This has been a conspicuously difficult and bad week for President Trump. He has attacked the demonstrators, he's called them thugs, he's called them terrorists, and he's shown a lack of compassion and inability to heal the country, to be firm, but to bring the country together. We saw the president threaten to involve the military, put the military onto the streets in order to restore order. And I would make the point, of course, that some of the Democratic governors and mayors have not been effective in addressing that problem. We then saw the president go outside a church, hold up a Bible, the implication being that God is on my side. The response to this was particularly conspicuous. Former chairman of the Joint Chiefs criticised the president. His own defence secretary distanced himself from the president, and the former defence secretary to Donald Trump, James Mattis, went public, and he said that in his lifetime he had never seen a president who was so incapable of uniting the country that Trump didn't even pretend to do it. So what we have now is a president who is not just the solution here, who can't provide the solution. We have a president who's part of the problem. I think the United States faces a particularly difficult 5 months with the pandemic raging, with more than 100,000 deaths and a severe economic downturn. This will be a very difficult 5 months for the American people.
Yeah, indeed, as we continue to watch these images this morning, that all leads me to your piece in The Australian yesterday about the crisis of Western liberalism. How widespread is that?
Well, I think it's widespread to a greater or lesser extent across most Western democracies, but it's particularly on display in the United States at the moment. What we saw that triggered this was the death of George Floyd, an Afro-American, at the hands of the police in an action of racism and police brutality. But this issue has become something much bigger and something much wider. What we see is competing views of the United States, competing visions of what America ought to be, and this reflects profound divisions in this troubled country. The issues here go to racism, they go to inequality, failure of governance over many decades, and in particular, of course, the plight of two different groups of Americans who were severely disadvantaged, Afro-Americans and the white working class, and then, of course, the divisions unleashed by Donald Trump. Now, one of the difficulties in America at the moment is that we've seen a weakening of the middle class. We've seen a hollowing out of the middle class and the rise of the polarisation of politics. And it's because the middle class provides so much stability. They're an anchor of stability with their commitments to income, employment, justice, incremental solutions. This is the ballast in the political system, and this is being hollowed out. So what we've got is we've got the rise of extremists on both sides. Because the liberal order has failed, this has only brought the liberal order into more and more discredit. So I think that the great difficulty the United States faces is this polarisation and the rise of extremes. What we're really seeing, Kieran, is the rise of two cultures in one country, and that's very troubling.
And Paul, let's look at some issues at home now. The foreign investment changes. They've been coming for some time. In fact, I think 3 or 4 years in the making. Understandably, no specific mention of China, even though it's largely about that particular nation.
It's all about China, Kieran. There's no question about this. And what we've seen is the transformation of the nature of foreign investment. There was once a time when foreign investment was about economic returns, but as the Prime Minister and the Treasurer made clear this week, foreign investment now has a strategic purpose, and it's certainly used by China along with other countries in terms of a strategic purpose. So what we've seen here is we've seen the striking of a new balance between a promotion of foreign investment on the one hand and national security protection on the other. This is the most significant change to the foreign investment rule since 1975, and the heart of the change is there's a new national security test with a $0 threshold, which means that any foreign investment proposal in terms of either a public or private capital which goes to sensitive national security areas, and these are likely to be very broadly defined in terms of telecommunications, critical infrastructure, data storage, the role of utilities, energy, electricity, ports, water. It's a very, very wide gamut. All such proposals will need to go to the Foreign Investment Review Board and then be approved by the Treasurer. So it's a very significant change. The Treasurer also made the point that just last year alone, 80% of the total value of foreign investment proposals that were approved with conditions. What this means is we no longer have the free flow of capital in terms of foreign investment into this country. The bulk of foreign investment approvals come with conditions, and of course those conditions have got to be policed, and we need to have the mechanisms to ensure that they're complied with.
And Paul, finally, this all coming at the time, an unusual time to have foreign investment changes as we enter formally the recession we were made to have by COVID-19.
The pandemic has ended the 29-year golden period of Australian history when we went without a recession, and that made Australia, frankly, famous in terms of global economic history. Well, that's all now ended. The March quarter showed the economy shrank by 0.3%. Josh Frydenberg pointed out that the June quarter will be far worse, so technically we will be in recession. The Treasurer made the point that the situation could actually be worse than what it is. He also made the point that our downturn to this stage is significantly less than the downturn in a number of other countries in both the United States and Europe. The reality, though, I think, Kieran, is that we're not going to have a V-shaped recovery in this country. I think recovery is going to be a very arduous, challenging and prolonged task. And the task now is to get the economy reignited, and then the government's got to follow up with a substantial reform agenda.
Paul Kelly, as always, appreciate your time and insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran.